All right, and we're live. Welcome, y'all, to Black Genius. My name is Lolade Shiombola, Olori Lolade Shiombola. I'm the founder of Noir Labs, Noir Press, and I have the esteemed honor of sitting here with Black geniuses and dusting out their stories, pulling out their stories, and getting to share with you all the amazing things that they have done and contributed to the world and how they do it. So today's guest is Stephanie Pierre.
Yay.
She is a yoga teacher, gifted designer, storyteller. She's the founder of Hood Esoterics, the Melanin Project. Stephanie does a lot of amazing things at the intersection of business, of wellness, of the metaphysics. And I'm just really excited for us to get into it. I'm going to go ahead and read her formal bio so we have her, proper receipts. So Stephanie leverages her intuitive gift of creation to design spaces and campaigns meant to restore and uplift the esteem of historically marginalized communities and their members, both internally and externally. Her professional experiences range from mental health nursing as a licensed practical nurse to an experiential marketer in the economic and community development sector. She currently serves as the head of experiential marketing of her own boutique creative agency, the Melanin Project, and she has directly assisted businesses and municipal agencies, both large and small, to develop unique and culturally relevant initiatives, programming, campaign, social media content. She has a BA in sociology from Stony Brook and an MBA in risk management in healthcare from Metropolitan College of New York. So help me snap your fingers and stomp your feet. Welcome, Stephanie Pierre. I just got to tell them how we met because we met at Aunts and Uncles, my favorite place in the whole world, right? Sitting there, everybody, at the cafe doing their work, right? And you just sat by me, and the vibe was just strong. We just started it's like we were family from like lifetimes, right? And we were talking about shrooms and cannabis and wellness and liberation and all the things and how they're all connected. And we, it's just always been such a pleasure and an honor to be in your energy and in your presence and to learn from you and to just like watch you do what you do and watch you work how you work. So you have this, I think it's like bi-weekly or a few times a month, you have a gathering downtown Brooklyn. You have Hood Esoterics. You were talking about doing yoga, with our people. I want you to just talk a little bit about, what you do and what excites you the most about your work.
Thank you for that. First of all, thank you for reading the bio. We appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here with your audience.
Yes.
Wow. So that's a really great question. I appreciate the part that asks about excitement, right? Because that's really what drives me. I live a very inspired life. I feel as though there is, what I feel called to do is be a creative polymath. I feel as though it is my natural ability to create things. And because in addition to that, building things that serve is something that is important to me too. I, like many people, have tried a bunch of different industries and found that I kind of was like a hummingbird in all of them, right? I started as a nurse at 17. This is before I had college credits. So that was kind of started for me. Wow. And it launched me into mental health because that was like, got the degree, and then now I'm in the community doing community-based work on assertive community treatment teams. Those are like mental health mobile crisis, right? Wow. So it's a pretty emotionally intense job that I did for about 5 years. Wow. So I've been to every housing project, trap, brothel, you name it, in the 5 boroughs. Yeah. And so I think I got an appreciation for just mental health maintenance. And in addition to that, also I became very clear on the disparity between who's serving the community and who the community actually is. I'm on a team with very affluent white women who choose when they feel safe enough to deliver a service. Like I've been at the table when they're like, the homeboys are there and I just don't feel like, I didn't feel safe, so I didn't go in. To me, you just delayed treatment to somebody. You know what I'm saying? Because you didn't feel safe. Why are you on this team? Why you do this work if you get to just sit here with a latte later and tell us why you chose not to service someone who is only attached to us because they are severely and persistently mentally ill. And I wish it was something that I didn't see, but I think that, the divine had kind of been orchestrating my steps from there. So I was just really good at it. And so from there, after I left, I decided that, I might want to expand the ability to like talk to C-level executives about how they're resourcing us to do this hard work. Right. And that took me to my master's, because I was like, if I could talk money, then the C-level execs will listen to me. Right. And I think the normal course when you start as a practical nurse too is just go get your RN, do your BSN, be an NP. And there were a lot of people who wanted that for me, and I didn't listen to any of those people. So they were like, I don't know what this girl's got going on. But I was like, I don't really feel like doing that, because I think I've always been somebody that once I understand a thing, like I feel like I get it. I'm on to the next thing now, So I went and I got my MBA, and I was able to, part of my graduating, I had to develop this project that had to be fully viable by the time I graduated. That was like our thing. And so, I was like, well, let's do pop-up respite centers for people who for people who do not have a mental health diagnosis. Because currently you can't get into a respite unless you've already encountered the mental health system.
So can you just break down what respite, are you speaking of like what we would, what a lot of people would refer to as like institutions for the mentally ill, or, okay.
So respites are, they're actually like a super diet version of that. A respite center is where someone who has been in the mental health system already can go if they feel like they're under pressure and they might end up relapsing, or they might end up having another episode. So it's more like preventative care, but it's only been accessible by people who have already been in the system. My argument was, if we could provide this pop-up on site, right, or some type of services on site, we would not only curb the number of people who get to the mental health system, right? We can catch them before they get there. But two, if you make it pop up, you can kind of ensure some level of anonymity, and you won't disrupt the workflow if you build it into the work site. And so I was just trying to find a way for people to not have any more excuses as to why employees doing very hard work should also be ill. Because if you look at some of these human resources, the percentage of absenteeism and, even how much some of these HR departments are spending on mental health drugs, antidepressants and stuff was skyrocketing. And I graduated in 2018, so now after a pandemic, I can only imagine what those numbers look like. And the fact that everyone's like, no one wants to go to work. I'm like, no, you're looking at mass employee absenteeism because everyone is mentally exhausted. But had we had, and I think now we're in a time where folks will entertain the idea of making it a little bit more commonplace, making these services, whether they be holistic alternative services or you bring a therapist on site. It's up to you, as long as you are addressing it and, providing people an opportunity to stay sane. You lose your sanity because you want to earn a living. It shouldn't be that way.
I just want to invite welcome our LinkedIn audience, because I just added LinkedIn to the stream. Initially, welcome LinkedIn. We're here with Stephanie Pierre of Hood Esoterics of the Melanin Project. And she's talking to us about, her journey in impacting mental health wellness through corporate partnerships and the medical system. Because I wanted to ask you, what was there a moment? I ask everybody this, what was the moment when you were like, I have to do this work, right? Because you talked about like being a nurse and what you observed. What was the moment that made you like, okay, for you to now go into, speaking to corporate leaders and building out solutions like respite centers? What was the impetus for that?
I think that when I realized that I could talk to them and they would listen.
Okay.
I think I will say it might just be the discovery of the power of my voice. I would sit often in medical team meetings, just the doctors and nurses are talking. And when I'd speak, people would listen. And so, I would find other nurses would be like, hey, could you say this? Or could you do this? And I was like, why can't you? You sit right here too. And it wasn't until I was just like, you know what? Maybe I should leverage this. This is a complaint. Let me bring this up. And so, couple that with just being naturally engineered to be very intuitive. I felt like I just knew what people wanted. And it's a skill that you kind of cultivate as a nurse, especially in mental health. You kind of develop like a sixth and seventh sense. You know when someone is like, they're not about to take this drug. You know when you should stop forcing. You know when it's time to give another alternative. You know, and because we were dealing with people who were severely mentally ill, they were a bit unpredictable, right? Because ACT teams are alternatives to long-term care facilities. So if you're in the community, that means we have to stabilize you. We got to see you often, that kind of thing. So you kind of develop what we call the belly barometer. If you ain't supposed to be there, you got to leave because you're going to the trap. You're not going to room 216 at Bellevue. That's not where you're going, you know, or you're going to where this person a drug den. You might go to where, because harm reduction is real. These people might still be using, like, so you develop this ability to kind of trust your own intelligence because your safety matters too, first and foremost. So I think it was just recognizing that people actually listened. And so couple that with also seeing for the first time people choose to serve, like I mentioned before, kick it up to community development. I'm watching neighborhoods be misrepresented and then sold, right? Not that there aren't people in those neighborhoods who aren't trying to advocate for themselves, but they, for whatever reason, people don't hear them. And I don't know if it's language, I don't know if it's energy, I don't know what it is, but they're willing to hear it from me. So it was like, well, then let me just be a mouthpiece here. In terms of esoterics and yoga, like I've always been this girl. My parents bred this in me a long time. I discovered yoga at like 20. You know, my personal practice is about like 12, 13 years old.
So let's back up and come into your parents and your upbringing and what made you, you know, kind of how you cultivated that root, or how they helped cultivate that root that made it so that when you were in the, you know, the health field and mental health field, that you kind of made this connection. Talk about growing up and because you grew up where?
In Brooklyn, New York, baby, right in Flatbush.
BK all day.
Period.
What part of Brooklyn? Flatbush, okay.
Flatbush.
And you have, I know we talked about your cousin. You have siblings?
I do. I have an older brother and a younger sister.
Okay. And so
we're about like 4 years apart with my younger sister, but about 3 years with my older brother. And we, you know, I grew up here. I love New York City. I love Brooklyn. I feel like there is no city better. Everyone should feel that way about your respective place, but that's how I feel about mine. And I felt like growing up a dark-skinned Black woman who was the daughter of 2 Haitian immigrants in early Brooklyn is really did give me some chops, right? Because at one point, really, like a little before me, you know, people would be physically assaulted for being an immigrant in the school systems, right? Like, so my older cousins knew what it was like to go to school and watch Haitian kids get jumped because they were Haitian. African kids get jumped just because they was African, like, you know? And so back then the culture in Brooklyn was a lot rougher too. Like the interaction between men and women was really rough. So if a man tried to holler at you in the street or something, I have seen women get hit, you know, because they said nothing. So you kind of learn how to, like, you know, get a little bravado, like, you know, just to make sure if it come to that, you gotta do what you gotta do, you know. But then my parents, so that was real Brooklyn outside my door. In my house was Port-au-Prince, right? In my house, I was in Port-au-Prince. And my parents.
In case anybody doesn't know, Port-au-Prince is that capital of IT.
Okay, like,
mm-hmm.
Just in case you didn't know. So, both my parents, April Aries, you know, that's enough said. Very, very strong-minded. This is what I'm gonna do. This is what needs to happen, kind of people. I think I'm grateful that they always allowed me room to explore. Right, like my parents weren't haters like that. Like they didn't, like, you know, jump in and mix company and be like, "Damn, that's how you clean your room." They weren't like that. They weren't like that, and I'm grateful for that. But I think what led me to here I am today is that they both had very strong spiritual systems. My dad was a Mason. My mom just had she held on to our cultural roots. So they never hid mysticism from me. My dad would talk about the Kabbalah with me at like 15, right?
Mm-hmm.
14, 15. I must have asked my dad who Jesus was around like 13, 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me like, hey, the man said you could do it too. So once I got permission, it was like, oh, so I guess I can explore some other things, you know? And then my mom she was always like, voodoo people are scared of voodoo, but like it's culture. It's not just people. It's not whatever people are saying it is. It's not. And that's what people do.
Yeah.
It ain't just because do people navigate, poverty with it? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
People do awful things with it? Yes. But I was able to receive that it was more of a tradition than it was a religion. Right. And so I think they did a really great job in like leaving the door open for me to kind of build my own understanding, because they still did things like, hey, be careful, don't go over there, don't do this, I had a dream, all of that stuff was in my background too. But I think that's what they gave. That's what my parents gave me, and that's what Brooklyn gave me. Brooklyn gave me armor, so I can step in rooms, I can step in other states, I can step to people, because that's what Brooklyn gave me. But my home, my parents gave me just like the ability to define myself, like, and I think that was really helpful, because here I am now defining myself every day, professionally, socially, even to the point where I'm able to help people define themselves for themselves.
So what does this practice look like for you practically, right? So in terms of your belief system being integrative, allowing what you learned from Masonry and what you learned from Vodun and what you learned from Christianity and etc., how do you embody that? How does that serve you in your day-to-day? And then how do you now apply that in your work?
So that's great. Man, it's such an involved question, because, and I feel really excited to say, so I'm going to slow down because I want to make sure I get it out right. When my parents gave me the ability to look beyond doctrine, they gave me, without recognizing, the permission to investigate culture at the same time. Like, so instead of the question of why not go to church and follow Jesus, I had the permission to be like, who is Jesus? Who said it? Who said that he's that? Who said I'm this? You know what I mean? Like, that's my line of questioning. And so my bio, I went to Stony Brook for sociology. So that's literally just studying human interaction. So I've kind of always had that mind. Now, what it's done for me personally, and the biggest thing is, I feel that it's liberated me in ways that I'm not seeing in a lot of other peers or other groups. There are certain understandings about who I am, how I operate, and what I'm supposed to be doing here that have been clear to me for a longer time, I feel, than a number of my peers, right? And that level of liberation, although it's very scary because you kind of don't know what you're headed for, has built me such a strong core to return to when things get crazy. Because it isn't that I have all the answers, because I don't, right? I have just as much questions, if not more, because I'm actively like researching myself. I am my first area of study, and how I relate to the world is my next, right? So it isn't that I have all the answers, but it's given me a solid foundation to return to. I know through voodoo that as a woman, I am engineered to be a reservoir for life. You understand? Life looks for women, because that's the only way it's coming through, right? And so I was esteemed as a woman in voodoo in a way I was not esteemed as a woman in Christianity. And so it allowed me to say, well, what works for me from Christianity and what works for me here? I'm going to just merge that, because in voodoo, you can be voodooism and Christian. It's Christianity that won't let you be Christian in something else, right? So as I began to see, oh, women have value. I'm not just, help meet. I have value. And then beyond that, they gave me polarities to follow. If I,
Mm.
so these polarities, whether you're looking at a Ezerli Dunto, whether you're looking at a Freda, whether you're looking at a Brigitte, you can see your own personality in there, and then you can also see what's available to you should that be in your own personal makeup too.
Mm.
And it normalized this whole angry black woman trope doesn't exist in those other systems,
Mhm.
but it's almost part of some sermons in Christianity,
Mm.
right? And so I found that like it gave me permission to be multidimensional. And so I allow myself to receive inspiration from these polarities because they're not here to harm me. They've served my family, they've served the country. I know things look a little interesting right now, but I think honestly it's what's allowed whatever's left of the country. And let's get one thing straight. Port-au-Prince is on fire, right? That don't mean Jacmel or any other area is. People are vacationing right now in Haiti, okay? Disclaimer. But it allowed me to one not feel othered, so othered.
Mm.
Um, I wasn't some defective woman because I wanted to be free. I wasn't some defective woman because I had a voice. I wasn't defective or this person that would never be married, never be a mom because I had opinions. In fact, when I look at these systems that belong to my family for ages, I fit right in. You know what I mean? I come from a long line of these polarities. You get what I'm saying? So to not express the way that I express normally would actually be a slight instead of some act. I don't know how else to explain it.
Mhm.
And then when it came to mysticism in terms of Kabbalah, that was kind of how me and my dad bonded, right? And so I don't know esoterics without community. And what's interesting is that this knowledge that we talk about in these spaces, particularly hood esoterics, right? And I'll get to that in a second, is really the same knowledge they learned in mystery schools, which were groups of people. So, I just mysticism allowed me, after I built on, okay, I'm a woman and I have value and I can deserve to have value. Now here comes mysticism that says, hey, yo, on top of that, you're this energetic being. You might have been here for millennia. There is math that can prove this. There are seasons that can prove this. Astrologically, this is what you look like. I was like, oh my God. It was like opening up a Pandora's box, and all I kept finding was layers of me.
You girl, you with the poetry though? I mean, wanting to not even like interrupt you because I'm like, you have dropped so many. I can't even keep up. My pen can't keep up with all of like the golden gems of poetry that you have already dropped in this like 20 minutes of talking. So yes.
But that's literally the experience. And so
Mm.
when I apply it to myself, I ritualize my life, right? Like I wake up in the morning, I treat my spirit first, right? And because these are things that I've learned in other systems, like you must treat your spirit first. In fact, you're not even a body first, you are a spirit first. So you must treat that first. Beyond that, there is beyond that, like beyond ritualizing like how I live my life, there is more grace for myself in this process because I realize that I'm like a speck in the larger scheme of things, and I'm really just giving it the best I got. Right? I don't have to be perfect. I don't have a a role I'm supposed to fit. Like that's why these conversations around gender norms sometimes really irritate me. What do you bring to the tables? Oh my God. Like, those things really irritate me because it's your right. It's divine nature for you to like shapeshift. Because it's your life. You literally make it what you want. And then how I extend that to others through hood esoterics is I recognized that I was always the friend that people were calling whenever they saw an angel number or something, or like, they just felt like, hey, I got this problem, and how do we handle it? Because I have to study culture. Esoterics is just a blanket word for hidden knowledge, and so it encompasses art, numerology, astrology, literature, poetry. It encompasses all of that. So I just wanted to, I said, how can I make my life easier? Why don't I just open up a space? And so I first started doing hood esoterics on my Instagram. I would give folks 2 topics, tell them to vote, and then whatever I knew on it, I'd share. right? And at first I was like, oh, I don't want to share it. I'm not a master in this stuff. I don't feel like I should be the one speaking. But the reality is that this has been part of my life for a very, very long time. And there are people who are just walking through the door. So they might find value in what I'm saying, you know? So I started on that. And then a friend of mine was like, hey, there's this bookshop in Dumbo and they're looking for someone to host poetry. And at the time, it's funny you said the poetry piece, right? Like, and at the time I was podcasting with the Stereo Bros. I no longer am, but still a very solid podcast for you. Savor, Brooklyn, look it up. And I started, they were like, yo, you want to do a hood esoteric corner on our show? I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So then it went from Instagram onto the podcast. And people would hit me the next day like, yo, I was writing things down. I'm like, for real? For me? Y'all talking to me? Oh, okay, cool. I didn't realize that. And so I just, from there, people are like tuning in and such. And I felt really esteemed. And then my friend sent me something from the poetry joint. And she was like, call the lady and see what's up. So I was like, no, why not? So I hit her up. And we talked for 2 hours. It's the first time I'm meeting this woman. We talked for 2 hours. And she's like, I told her about Hood Esoterics. And she's like, yo, we should do it. And now we started January 6th. Here we are. Our next session is April 28th. And what I do is just create an environment for people to ask the questions they would ask their woke friend. They get to get answers, not just from me, but from each other, from people I might invite into the space. Nothing is weird, and I love it. They've been well attended from the beginning. Now, after our last one, we had one at the top, one in March with Priestess Yandes of Ancient Blends Apothecary in Bed-Stuy. And then I started getting messages from people who weren't even in the country. And they were like, I want to be in the space. How do I get there? I'm like, oh my God. Like, you don't even live on the continental United States. You want to come to what I'm throwing? Cool. Like, why not? So we're like right now in this moment, like optimizing some ways so that they can like stream in and such. But it's just evidence that, if you build it, people will come. And that the thirst for higher knowledge is actually really, really, really real. So for me personally, I ritualize my life with the knowledge that I learned. For others, it esteems me to open space for others to do the same for themselves. And that's really what I'm doing. I know was that a lot?
No, that was right on point. Thank you for that. And so as I think about the term hood esoterics, right? Like I think it's such a powerful juxtaposition of terms, right? It's so striking to consider the hood dynamic as we understand it, and then to consider the idea of access to esoterics. So I want you to speak a little bit on the connection, like that I guess inflection point, that place where Black spirituality, kind of intersects with our economic situation and our socioeconomic situation globally. I'll just kind of, I always reference this work, Social Debt by Orlando Patterson of Harvard, where he talks about how anywhere you go in the world, you will see that the poorest and the most downtrodden people are people of African descent, right? The darker the skin, right? The less they have. And so when we think about the hood, I think of the hood as a metaphor for any place where Black people are, I don't want to say that it always means suffering, right? Because it doesn't have to always mean suffering, right? It's a place where we come together. But again, the reality of a lot of our environments is that, is that poverty and that socioeconomic situation. So I just want you to kind of speak to that intersection of like, Black environments, socioeconomic status, and esoteric knowledge.
So I would say this: Black people, brown people, we've always been divine and we've always known that about ourselves. We study our cultures, it will give you hard facts, hard facts. I think we only are able to make something beautiful out of these intentionally destitute geographical areas because of that divinity. And I feel like my purpose is to make sure that people recognize it's their own magic that's keeping them alive in these conditions. And that if they were to access intentionally that their own magic, they could build a better reality.
Wait, let's just let that sink in for a minute. It is our magic that is helping us to thrive in these conditions regardless. And if we have more access to, more appreciation for and use of our magic, we can create even better realities. What do those better realities look like? And how does the practice and the study of esoterics help us to create those realities?
You asking all the fire questions. Okay.
I appreciate that.
You're asking all the fire questions. So the better realities, the first and foremost is sovereignty. We don't have it.
Make me dance. I like that word. I like that word, sovereignty. You talk about sovereignty to me, that gets me excited. Go ahead.
We don't have it. We don't have it. We don't have it. If we had a better understanding that when we can define ourselves for ourselves and say, this is what we want to do, this is what we want to see, and we don't even need you to make it happen, then you can build whatever you're trying to see. And the hood to a degree does it anyway. I said at the top of the pandemic, the hood's gonna survive because they know what it's like to not have. The store shelf not having no food, not having no toilet. Some of that's regular in some neighborhoods.
The everyday apocalypse.
It's like so many, you know what I'm saying? Like we joke about like saltines and ginger ale when you're not feeling well, or spam this and whatever. However, people were like, whatever corner store things that we, Band-Aids that we had for illness, and we joke about those in jest, but that's really intelligence. That's really us doing the best we can with what we got. And so I'm just like, if we look back to the people who literally they own their own everything. They've left a blueprint for there are rubric on how to manage your mind. There are diets. We have so many intellectuals who have left behind long legacies, long bodies of work that will identify you. Hey, this is where you come from. This is what they did. Hey, this is how these people ate because this gave them levity and they were able to keep themselves light and connect to the spirit in that way. Hey, these people were astrologers and astronomers. They actually gave us math. And if you apply the math that they gave you, you'd be able to build a better reality tomorrow. So it's that, like, first and foremost, it's sovereignty. It's the ability to say, no, I don't want that. No, not in this neighborhood. No, not at my school system. No, not in the hood. And my work in community development kind of also gave me the armor for that too, because they're doing whatever they want. When you go to a different neighborhood and they're just throwing buildings up and you don't know how the buildings are getting there, that's because you don't have no sovereignty. You don't have no sovereignty. There's nobody is checking. There's no one should be able to come to your yard and just do what they want. No one. And if you optimize a thing, right? If you optimize a thing that says, say they gave you the projects, right? Cool. But then the projects became like a cultural reference for bravery and bravado and style, and Jay-Z's from the projects. Now there are people taking pictures in front of Marcy. Like, what are you talking about? When I grew up in Brooklyn, baby, there is no just walking around taking pictures in the projects. You're gonna get robbed. That's how that goes. Like, and you would have deserved it because you don't belong there.
Oh my God!
Deserved it because you don't belong there. It's like going to the zoo. I'm over here. Same thing with the Joker when in the Bronx when they had the Joker on the stairs, and suddenly he had that scene on the stairs, and now everybody is in the Bronx taking pictures on the Joker staircase. What's the Joker staircase? This is the same staircase that people were afraid of being robbed on. This isn't a tourist location, but you know what? People who have sovereignty over their neighborhood remind the people who show up that that's not what that is. And it doesn't mean that they want to keep their neighborhoods, disenfranchised or anything, but culturally they have a right to say, what are you doing here? This is a landmark. This is our landmark for this purpose. And I just want us to be able to do that. A better reality to me is being able to say, this is my spot, this is how we run it, and you're going to have to work with me to get it done, right?
So you spoke to a few systems, right? Knowledge systems, spiritual systems that you referenced in terms of how we can get this knowledge, right? How we can apply these understandings. And I want you to get a little bit more specific with that.
Okay.
Right? You talked about references that teach us how to eat, teach us about numbers, give us a little bit. If somebody is completely brand new, and they're trying to like navigate the esoteric, ecosystem. Is it books? Is it, of course, come to Hood Esoterics and get, come to these events, right? We'll plug the event April 28th, right?
Please, yes.
Again?
So it's April 28th at Adonai Bookshop in Dumbo.
Adonai Bookshop in Dumbo. So maybe that's a good place to get some of these resources I'm about to ask about. So yeah, so if I'm brand new to esoterics, to the esoteric landscape, and I'm trying to learn about like, the spiritual systems and how to eat, for levity and all of that, where should I go? Where should I start? How should I, and what are some of like the landmark works that I should be reading or consuming to understand this landscape?
If you are coming, so if you're coming from like the Christian background or whatever background, I say your first book is your doctrine, is whatever is in that doctrine. I am not somebody that throws away the Bible. I'm not. I feel that there is truth in the Bible because I've researched the origins of the Bible, right? So there's real magic in there. The Bible is one of the highest books of magic that we have. That whole Psalms is spells. Sorry.
It's not a crime because there's a quote from an article I shared in our Slack that says just that. It was like a New York Times article or something about how so many Black women were moving into esoteric systems and other spiritual systems. And one of the self-proclaimed witches that they interviewed, she said, the Bible is just one big spell book. So I love what you.
But I would say the first step might be to, whether it's the Quran, the Torah, look at your holy book and write some real questions. Wow. When you write those real questions down, if it's around a character, for example, I'll give you a personal anecdote. One of my first questions was around, I think it's Esther in the Bible. And it wasn't. It was my girl, Mary Magdalene, who is my favorite character in the Bible. And because to me, she was the most liberated. And so I was like, well, why? My first question was, well, where's the man she was cheating with?
Girl. There's a scripture, it almost makes me cry because there's a scripture, I can't remember where it is, if it's John or something, and the elders or whoever bring this woman to Jesus, and they're like, we caught her in the act of adultery, right? And then the book says that we must stone her, right? What do you say that we should do, right? And then Jesus says, he who is without sin cast the first stone. And Jesus is like busy playing on, he's like writing stuff on the ground or whatever, right? He's teaching people, and then he eventually looks up because he's not paying them no mind. Eventually he looks up and she's still there. He's like, oh, what happened? Nobody stoned you? Nobody judged you? And she's like, no, nobody condemned you? He's like, no. And he said, neither do I. Go into no more, right? That had me all in my feels. And then I was like, where is that mother effer that she got caught? If they caught red-handed in the middle of the act, they only brought her?
We are unclear.
Where is the dude?
Where's he at though? What scene did y'all catch? Like and so that was my first question. Where's the gentleman? Because by today's cultural standpoints, right? The person who has allegiance to that marriage is that husband, right? So where's he at though? So that was my first question. I was like, well, let me, why doesn't it say that? And the blessing on my life is that I could ask my dad, right? I could be like, where was the guy? Steph, read the book. See, because he always used to titrate things to me. He'd be like, you're only 14, you're only 15, you're right. So he'd be like, keep looking and see what it says to you. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not going to find the answer in the Bible. Maybe I need to find the answer. What would be the opposite? And my dad had told me about an agnostic Bible. And I was like, what is an agnostic Bible? It's the first time I realized there were other versions. And then from there, because I grew up Catholic, right, I realized that there were different books that were not in this Bible that I had. So I was like, so where are those books at? You know what I mean? And if you look at some of, because there are ways to find it now. We are in the age of information. You can go on YouTube and find the book of Mary Magdalene and read it if you wanted to. Okay. And I realized that the stories of the narrative on this woman is not the same in the book I have versus the other book that I have. So I was like, well, why would the story be different? What time period is this? Now I'm doing anthropological work. Now I'm going to look at the time period. How did they treat women in that time period? Was Mary Magdalene a prostitute? She was a prostitute. Where did she come from? Like, you know, like this is esoterics at work, right? It's research. It's what I think you coined it, actually, spiritual scholarship. Right? It's you being like, okay, I received this story. I can even receive the blessing, the message from this story. But if I want to apply it in a way that is practical to my life, I must understand it. And I can't understand a story that doesn't give me all the facts. You can't catch a woman in adultery and not bring in both of those people. I couldn't. So that's when I was like, all right, I need to see more. So I would encourage people, just in general, just to go back to your question, to just first write down without judgment. Don't judge yourself for the questions you're writing. This is your spirit that's trying to lead you somewhere. So I would just have them write down things from their own book. Take it to your pastor. Take it to your rabbi. Take it and see what they say. See how they encourage you to do your own research. If they don't encourage you to do your own research, it's a red flag. Because no spiritual system should want you to only be beholden to what they tell you. And I will also say this.
Why is that? Why should they not want you to only be beholden to what they tell you?
Well, because the spirit doesn't have boundaries, right? Like, we have to understand that anthropologically, religion was used as a tool of control. There's facts for it. We don't need to debate this anymore in 2023. Pharisees, religion, because, okay, let me give you a little extra. Let me go back a little bit more. If we go to like Mesopotamia, right? We're talking about Sumerians, Babylonians, Chaldeans. We're talking about way back, Fertile Crescent, life started. You know what I'm saying? You go back there. Your spirituality, whoever was able, this is why women were revered, because whoever was considered most connected to the divine was who held power, right? So women, you the only one that brings human beings through here. Nature looks like you. When we cut fruit open, it looked like you. Their vaginas in all kinds of parts of in rocks, waterfalls, you name it, right? So our ancients understood that. And so because they started that way, it was like, all right, whoever's closest to God, that's where we're taking our orders, because we understand that the divine, there's no separation. In fact, we have these natural conduits, this natural relationship with it. We're going to take heed that way. As our societies became more patriarchal, there was some usurping of power, right? Because the world was matriarchal in the beginning. As we started seeing more of a revolution and turning into patriarchal societies, that's when we started to see this religion, the ascension of men into these positions. Not that men weren't in the positions already, but the ascension of men into positions and the realization that, hey, this is control. Patriarchal societies run on competition. They run on control. They run on domination. They do. Because once the society started turning patriarchal, that's when we started going out and trying to possess other people's nations, and we warring with these people for their land. And now we doing this, that, and the third. It doesn't mean that we weren't we didn't have conflict in the beginning, but we certainly didn't have it to the level that we see it now, right? And as people started to realize that religion was something that could be used to control the masses, we started seeing a perversion of it. And so when I say your spiritual leader should not want you to only get your info from the one book you are questioning, right? He or she should encourage you to go and do your own research. That's because that's building your spiritual aptitude. That's building your ability to discern for yourself. What I appreciate most about voodoo culture, right? You in the Peristyle.
Go to where?
The Peristyle, the temple.
Okay.
So voodoo temple. Anyone can get mounted by a spirit. You don't even need to be initiated. Anyone can be mounted. And then on top of anyone being mounted, it's not even a big deal. Once someone, it looks like great fanfare on Instagram and whatever else, but once somebody's mounted, they make sure you are right. And then once you good to walk, talk, and breathe, folks are back in the service, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I got from that was God comes down and picks whomever to deliver the message. I don't show up to the same building every Sunday, Saturday, Tuesday, and I only get it from Pastor John. Something there don't make sense, right? Like for me, it's like if God and these other systems can come down and sit on anybody, then why in this system can he only sit on you?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't receive something different from what you're saying at the pulpit in the back pew? Because often it's happening anyway, right? People are catching the spirit anyway, right? So how is it that I can catch the spirit in this church, but I can't, but the word, the inspiration that's coming through to me, the questions I'm having, I have to get fact checked by you, by this one person who was in the beginning, who is in the leadership of this church. So religion has always been used to kind of like steer where society is going because it had the influence, it had the power, levy taxes. This is not, everyone thought that tithes was just this, completely spiritual practice. I'm like, no, your roots come from taxes. That's where it comes from, taxes. So I feel like whoever you trust the cultivation of your spiritual wisdom with, they should encourage you to learn how to do it on your own. If they don't encourage you on how to do it on your own, they're really just making a slave. And these are Stephanie's words. Like, I feel like they're just making a slave. Turn to page, to Acts chapter 2, this verse, this verse, this verse. This is what it means. This is what it means. This is what it means. And it's like, okay, cool. I know there's a lot more, and forgive me I'm speaking from mainly the Christian context because that's what I know, right? But, whatever your spiritual system is, turn to this book. We're going to do this. We're all going to sing. In Catholicism, they told you a year in advance what the scripture was going to be. A year in advance. And in 1 year, I think it was maybe 2000, the church decided to change the response to something. And so I remember being in a church, we have these new missalettes, and if we always used to say, and peace be with you, suddenly we were like, and God's love is real. And everybody was just looking at each other like, every Sunday for at least a month, it was just people saying the old things, people saying the new things. And I asked, why the hell, who did Jesus come down and give this to y'all for us to say? I was very confused. I was like, the rest. So if you changed it when we were saying the old stuff, is that not good no more? Like what's the reason? There was no reason. We never got it. And that level of control, people just accepted it. And now to this day, there ain't no confusion.
You brought us to the subject of control, slavery, tithes being levies,
baby,
competition in patriarchal society, right? So this brings us to our third bucket of this conversation as we start to, close it out. Economics, business, social enterprise. We started off this conversation talking about, mental health, illness, right? Working in the trenches, in the field, in the trap houses.
In the trap.
Sorry.
In the trap. Okay, we was there.
In the, the dens where people were really the upper echelons, the 1% would call the lower rungs of society.
Absolutely.
Right? The people who we have forgotten somehow, they have ended up in a situation where things are so dire that they have to be, cared for, actively cared for, just to get through day by day, right? And so when I look at that reality, I question how it comes to be, right? And so we have these tremendous spiritual systems, with millions of, institutions all over the world,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
We have these corporations with that, again, millions of establishments all over the world, so
Mhm.
much of a presence, right? We
Mhm.
have a major religious presence, we have a major corporate presence, a presence that drives competition.
Mhm.
Right? I want you to speak about, to think about, to kind of synthesize for us a little bit how we get a reality like this when there are so many resources available,
Mhm.
like this hidden knowledge,
Mhm.
how we get a reality like this where people are in the lower rungs of society and it takes so much just to be able to keep them alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the application of esoteric knowledge for people in the lower rungs just will build their resilience enough so that they can see further. So for example, you when you cultivate your spirit, you realize you don't need as much, right? You also realize that what you thought you absolutely had to have, or what you thought was good for you or good enough for you, starts to change. You can no longer maybe eat in your neighborhood. You can no longer maybe like hang out at the impoverished community, underfunded community center. You probably can't rely on this public service, like public transportation that's janky and late and whatever the case may be. You automatically want better for yourself.
Mhm.
That's what happens when you build your spirit, because you realize that there's no separation between you and the divine. You are worthy of better. So once you start reestablishing your worth, because that's what's been fractured in the hood, is worth. People put you in these lower resource neighborhoods, or these under resourced neighborhoods, because they're trying to articulate that your value is equal to that.
Hmm.
So when you, as a person who's living in that environment, begin to cultivate your spirit, and as a result of that build your worthiness, you demand better. You build courage to demand, because you know that it's your right? Because often what we'll find is a lot of like defeatist language in the hood, where it's like, you know how it is, they don't want to see us win, we always under somebody's shoe. But when you decide that, I'm going to cultivate my spirit, and you spread that to your network, you start to ask more questions. You might demand more things. You might feel emboldened to put yourself in spaces that you typically don't think you would have ever been in. My first entry into community development was, I walked into a steering committee meeting one day, and everyone was around the table. They're talking about how wonderfully blended Flatbush is. Oh, it's some cultural melting pot, and it's amazing, and we could do such good work here. I was like, pick me. I've lived here all my life. I can tell you right now, the Hasidic community does not come past Avenue I. We, as the Caribbeans, do not go past Avenue I. We don't even shop at Target the same day. Beyond that, after Flatbush, around the corner, the neighborhood gets wider. Okay, we never see them. So I was like, I'm not sure what blending you think is happening, but I don't see no blending. I've been here my whole life. They gave me a job the next day. The next day. And it's only because I felt like you're trying to represent something that isn't there because you have other intentions for it. So it's my duty as someone who is here and who lived this to tell you what the real experience is. And I wouldn't have had the courage to do that if I hadn't started this work on myself. I don't know.
Mm.
That's how it starts. You ever heard the phrase like it all starts with you? It does. It does. You don't apply esoteric knowledge so that you go fix your friend. You become your area of self-study. And by changing yourself, you change the people around you, you change your environment, you change everything. So I think that with the application of esoteric knowledge, we'll begin to see more societies that have triple bottom lines, right? Triple bottom lines.
Yeah.
We're going to see, you're going to be able to make money, but you're also going to be able to serve the social good. We're finding ways to do that right now. And I think that if more communities, more hoods decided we're going to apply this knowledge, we're going to spread it in our community centers, maybe even open up a space where we can allow people to practice their spiritual traditions without judgment in this space. That's a thing.
You mean like a church?
Like a church, maybe.
Like a temple?
Maybe like a little multicultural something, something cute.
Interesting.
Because what impact is that? I listen to my older cousins talk about what's go to temple. Oh yeah, like voodoo's regular. So that's why Veve art is a regular thing. You know what I'm saying? Like it's no big thing to them. This is their culture. So they move in the world differently. Those cousins move differently than the ones who were always being told that it was evil. They don't move in the world the way those other people move in the world. You get what I'm saying? So I feel like if we, first start with ourselves, get to know yourself, which is why I said the first landmark is whatever holy book you already study. Whatever you already just study it like you would a textbook. Like get a syllabus, make your own syllabus. What questions what books you're gonna need to read, what YouTubes you're gonna need to watch, who you're gonna need to talk to in order to answer some of these questions. Once you find that out for yourself without even explicitly going to your friends, going to your kids, going to whomever, they're gonna feel it. Because energetically, it's almost like a turbine. Like you start your stuff kicking up, people could feel it in you. They could feel it around you. Now you don't want burgers, you want salads. Why are you eating funny? I say, we all heard that. Oh, you going
about all my friends.
Oh, you in yoga, and you gotta, and what does that even do? If it doesn't cleave off what's keeping you stuck, it builds your confidence and your courage to define yourself in that moment. I've had years of telling people, telling Stephanie, I don't understand. It's just weird. Like now you're doing this thing and I don't know. And now, I'm X amount of years later. And if you got a question, baby, go pick up a book first before you ask me anything. Because the information is out there. And then when you come, please come respectful, because I will not tolerate it. I will not tolerate it. I'm not worshiping the devil. No, I'm not doing it.
That's a whole other episode. People who thought it was crazy when you went natural, but when, now they going natural, they got questions. They want to come ask you, but
girl,
they're gonna start with an apology of like, I'm sorry I didn't listen to you when you were going natural, or when you started trying to teach us how to eat vegetables. But it's all good. It's all good. So yeah. Bottom line. So I want us to kind of land on this idea of how you build a society that drives a triple bottom line as a priority, right? As for those who may not understand it, and I'm going to let you define it because you're the MBA in the room. What is the triple bottom line for those who may not know?
It's essentially just like I think a lot of us have a general understanding of what a bottom line is, right? Something impacts your bottom line, it's your profit, it's revenue. And traditionally business, operates on the idea that we have to increase revenue for our shareholders, right? So people invest in the business, we need to give them dividends. So we're going to do whatever we got to do in order to raise the revenue so the dividends get bigger, our profit margin gets bigger, that kind of thing. That's what we've been operating on. A triple bottom line looks at the value add to the people that it's servicing with the product or the service, right? It essentially is asking, the people who are not shareholders, stakeholders in our brand, in our product, in our service, are they getting the max amount of value out of what we're giving? And traditionally, if we look at the hood, right, we're making that connection. Don't nobody care about what these people think. Nobody cares if they're getting value or not, which is why the food has been shit, which is why the school system has been underfunded. They don't care about value. But if the people in the neighborhood, in the hood, start to organize for themselves, they start to build their own competence, their own resilience, their own tenacity to do for themselves, their own sovereignty. They can absolutely not force. They can either build a system where there's a triple bottom line, or they can compel a system that's only using 2 right now to implement a 3rd, because they would refuse to not have value. They would refuse to have the value.
Ooh.
You understand? If you don't think that you are worth anything, you're going to take anything. But if you start building a system first within yourself, then within your community, you realize, no, we might deserve streetlights that work.
Oh my God.
We might deserve. I've seen some things, like for the last, I think it was the last 2 years, I was living in the beautiful city of Newark, New Jersey. And I think Newark is a fantastic city. If you want Black creation, Newark. It's a beautiful chocolate city. But when I say that you can tell where they stopped adding value, You can tell. Once that corporate financial district is done, you aren't even finding garbage cans on the street because they did not care about adding value for those people. They don't affect their bottom line, right? So why should I care about spending more money to add value for you? I don't care about you. So I feel like going forward, and we might not, I think we're building currently systems, at least culturally competent systems in the hood that have triple bottom lines. But I think globally, so that I can illustrate it better, you'll see this with like people playing around with the work week, hybrid this, hybrid that, because they want to make sure that there is a value add for their employee. They recognize now that their employee is going to need more than just a check to keep them there. Right. So now as an employer brand, I got to add value for my employee. I got to make sure that they're comfortable, that they find, that they feel like they are a valued employee in this system. They can live, they can operate in a way that has work-life balance for them so they can produce better. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think that's like a bit of the foreshadowing that I'm seeing with the triple bottom line piece. People are starting to care about quality of life for your employee. That's a hell of a start because we did not care before the pandemic. 40, 60 hours a week. If you was doing that, baby, this is what you signed up for,
Gangster. So let me just plug Ubuntu Agile in this mix because that's exactly why we exist, right? As Nora Labs. That's exactly why Nora Press, Nora Fest, Black Genius, all of this glorious Blackness is being put out into the world. One, to demonstrate and declare our value. And if you haven't seen our Declaration of Black Glory, it's on the Nora Labs website, the Decade of Black Glory. We create everything that we create to establish the premium value of Blackness, of melanin, of melanated people, right? And in the creation of these stories or the sharing of these stories, we get to show how we do add value to everything that we touch as Black people. When we talk about the history of hip hop and the impact of hip hop on the planet, we talk about even these esoteric and spiritual systems that all originated with people of African descent, with the original people indigenous to this planet, right? When we talk about currency and systems, all of it comes back to Black people. And so the work in this, this era, this time, the work that you are doing, that we are all doing together is really naturally creating new ways of being and new ways of exchanging value, where we're able to recognize that when we add value to the individual lives of our constituents, whether they be employees or customers, that it makes the world a better place for all of us. Our experience of this planet is better for all of us. Even as a corporation, whatever you create, if you're using sweatshops or, or enslaved labor to create products that are being sold at 1,000% margin, it's ultimately going to backfire on you one way or the other. But they may have reaped for the last, 100+ years and seem to see no consequences. But we are entering a different era right now where that's just not going to be the way anymore.
Absolutely.
So I want people to know how they can engage with you, right? I want folks, as you're watching, to understand that, the purpose of this, there is an echo, I'm going to mute my mic here. The purpose of Black Genius is to really bring to y'all the future leaders of the world, the future Black leaders of the world, right? People who are going to be who are thought leaders, who are shaping the way that we understand our reality, and who are shaping the way we do business and the way we have impact. And when I meet somebody or connect with somebody or dialogue with somebody who inspires me to no end, where I feel like, wow, this is evidence that we are genius and that we are glorious, and this is evidence that we are being liberated in real time, I feel compelled to bring that person and their story to anyone I can, everyone on my Rolodex, right? And also to give you the opportunity to benefit from their genius. We are creating commerce, we're creating a marketplace here, right? Creating opportunities for exchange. And so if you want to benefit from Stephanie's genius, you can go, your website is a Melanin Project?
I would encourage everyone to just hit me on so I'm on the gram. I put all my links in the bio for you guys. I do not do a lot of soliciting for any kind of yoga or esoterics on Instagram. It's energetically, it's very loud for me. So I don't like to spend a lot of time there. However, I do recognize that some people do use that for the news. So if my handle is at Hatshepsut, instead of S's, use 5s. And I don't know if I can type it somewhere, but I'll find a way.
You can, there are comments on the side, so you can drop it in the comments on the side. And as we, you know, create this Black Genius ecosystem, we'll be providing access to, you know, Stephanie's services on Portal X as well.
Yes.
And so you can always get packages. We're going to have to do some educational programming, etc., with Stephanie. But if this interview, if this conversation blessed you, if you learned something, make sure that you share it with somebody who needs to learn something. Let us know what you thought, what you learned, what you gained in the comments. Let us know what else you would like to learn from other Black geniuses. If there's somebody that you would like to see on this platform and that you would like to learn from, please, you know, drop that information to us as well. It's been such an honor, Steph, and I just want you to, you know, any last words that you have for those viewing, and just how you can kind of give, you know, that last thing for people to just walk away with, to know like how they can kind of intersect all of these things and use them and apply them to their life right now.
First, I'll say all who wander are not lost. All who wander are not lost. Okay. But to expound on that, I will also say, if this conversation felt like, all right, we're pulling from here, we're pulling from here, we're pulling from here, to double on what you said, we're building this new thing your kids are going to live in. So there's a lot of integration that is happening right now. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it. Just find your place in it, you know? So I would just encourage you to stay open, stay receptive, first to yourself, you know, and then to the divine is one and the same, but you know, first to thine own heart, be true.
Be true, yes.
Okay. And it will take you where you need to go. It really will. So and don't be afraid. The divine loves to use the unassuming, like the people who you're not checking for, to create waves in places that it needs waves. So there's a lot of waves going on right now. And if you're called to do that, just trust where you're being led.
Amen. Asha, beautifully said. Thank y'all so much for watching. If you'd like to support this, if you enjoyed this, go to portalx.space to see all the wonderful things that we're creating at Nora Labs. You can follow Hatshepsut on Instagram. We'll be sharing her content. Join our mailing list so that you can get the link to this video and more links about Steph. norapress.org/join. It's been a pleasure and an honor, and we will see you very soon. Stay blessed. Peace.